Dental Ventures. Welcome back in. A limited series podcast on marketing tips and strategies for opening up your startup dental practice. And today I'm going to jump right into it. We're going to talk about the power of direct mail. Listen up to this one because I feel that direct mail is by far one of the best tools I've seen over all the years that I've been working with dental practices and marketing. I was very much against it in the beginning. You know, I sold television advertising, then I had an ad agency, and direct mail was always the bottom of the list. But I am telling you, for hyper local marketing, I've never seen anything get a higher ROI and get more patients in than direct mail. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time on it today. But, you know, I, that's kind of my journey with it. But let me tell you where I fully got kind of sold on it. And I just want to give you this story because to use direct mail effectively, you have to be consistent. If you think you're going to run 1 or 2 months or even 3 months of direct mail and be like, wow, that really changed my life, that's not how direct mail works. Direct mail is great because it can get in somebody's home. It can be a marketing source to get that direct call to action to get somebody to come in now. But really, what direct mail, the strength of it is delivering a message every month to that house, letting them know you're there. But this is more about they know they need to go. It's been on their checklist for a while, and you keep reminding them every month who you are, showing them who you are for your brand, getting them to your website. You know, they get more bought in there. They're already starting to trust you before they even pick up the phone or schedule that appointment. So let me give you an idea of how this works. This is my personal story. There was a realtor years ago, and he would send every month, just like every realtor would. And keep in mind, this is probably 12 years ago. So this is really, Facebook was just kind of coming out at this point. But he sent out the typical mail that you would see that on the back, it's got, here's what's sold in your neighborhood for your free assessment. You know, go here, go to this website and fill out the information. But the interesting thing on was the front was just about him kind of and what he was doing with his life. It almost looked like a Facebook post, you know, that came through direct mail. And I remember the guy, Scott Germain, got his mail every month. And I kind of felt like I knew him, but he would send it to that neighborhood, our neighborhood, blanket it, and did it for 4 years before I took an action. And so I was thinking about selling my house, and I've got, you know, numerous friends, close friends that are in real estate. But when it came time to sell the house, I was like, I got to kind of use Scott. You know, I saw him, you know, go from being the single guy that moved to the city to, you know, dating and getting a dog and getting married and having his first kid. Like all that happened like on his postcode. It was so cool. So I did. I went in. He had a very easy call to action, same call to action he'd always had. He got me back something, called me, set up a time, and he was the guy that I used to sell the house. So it's amazing. It took 4 years of doing that, but I asked him. I said, "Is this worth the money?" And he was like, "Well, of course." He was like, "Because I generally maybe only get one person a month, sometimes even one every 2 months, but I'm only spending maybe $1,000 to send it out, but I'm getting back, you know, lots of times 10 grand in commission. So it's definitely worth it. It's a 10 to 1 no matter what." And then he's like, and then they might use me to buy their next house. And he's like, so yes, it absolutely makes money. So I always use that story because it sold me on it, you know. But during the leader brand process, you're going to discover that ideal patient, kind of like he knew this is the neighborhood I wanted to go after, you know. And most people, they want to find a list of just those people and mail to them. And this is completely misguided and quite honestly wrong. You know, if you're doing a nationwide campaign, yes, absolutely. You've got to be a lot more targeted. And I bring all this up because there's a lot of direct mail companies out there. And so, you know, how direct mail is kind of bought and sold and you know, distributed and that type of thing. You can do the, you know, EDDM, every door direct mail. That's basically you go to the post office, drop off cards. That is very difficult to accomplish and do, and not a whole lot cheaper than having somebody else do it. A lot of companies have EDDM options because they know that you want to save some money, but again, it doesn't save a ton. When I think about this is you want to be, I tell my clients, you want to be 5 Mile famous, and you're going to need to accomplish that on a lot of platforms. You can't just run TikTok videos. You've got to go out there and do the work. But direct mail is a great way for you to brand yourself and be unique, be authentic, be original. So, again, as a hyper local business, you need to own your area, be 5 Mile famous. You can get to your ideal patient with your creative and the messaging, but I would not narrow down the target market that much. I would get out there and just make sure you're creating awareness and calling people to action. But the biggest strength of direct mail is its ability to create a feeling about you. Like I was talking about with the realtor that made me kind of know what his story is and who he is, and I want to root for him. Um, but you need to create that feeling about who you are, your practices, and what you have to offer so that they're engaged with that brand before they even contact you. It also keeps them from having to do a dentist near me search because you are the dentist near them and you've been delivering this direct mail to them now. They're like, okay, you got me. I'll give you a really fun one that I did for a client, and he wanted to open up his practice, in the area where he lived. He was a father there. He coaches little league. He was actually partnered into another practice that was further away, and that was kind of wearing on him. And the partnership was just, you know, not as good as it once was, type thing. But he was like, a lot of this is just I want to do a practice myself the way I want to do it. And so we're going through his story brand. We go through everything, and it's about him being a dad, serving families in the community. And I said, you know what? I'm struggling with the marketing and the messaging and the creative. But what we came up with was just simply doing dad jokes on the front. And you would be amazed at how well that worked because that matched the story on his website, and that everybody loved it and they talked about it. The other thing was when he put those banners up in the baseball fields, people was like, oh, that's the dad joke guy. And he also did shopping carts that kind of appealed more to the moms, not just because moms shop at grocery store, everybody does, but he was trying to cover as many, you know, avenues as he could, but doing it more from this fatherly, joking kind of tongue in cheek way. And it worked out great for him and really launched his practice in a positive way. But I say that because people just didn't immediately run in off that. But he would get these people walk in with like 4 of them because they'd gotten them and said, all right, you finally got me. I know I need to come to the dentist. You seem like somebody that, doesn't take themselves too serious, and that for some reason relaxes me. So, but yeah, a great way to build it out is by being original, being authentic. So, and once people see you enough and they have clarity about who you are, they will engage. Direct mail patients are generally better patients because they represent your community. You can get a lot of people from pay-per-click that aren't in your community. They're also more likely to trust your treatment plans. They have a better retention rate. And on average, we have found that the direct mail patients that come in, because we track that and then look at it year over year, spend 30% more on dental services than the online leads. So I highly suggest running direct mail campaigns. I wouldn't do it every month for that first year. I would probably flight it out. I would do 8 months at least, maybe 4 months here, 4 months there. Think about the times you may be taking some time off, right? Like if you're going to be taking a week off at the beginning of June because your kids are out of school, I might not run it in May. Take a month off there, and then just other times to kind of give your budget a breather. Most clients I have run about 9 times that first year. A lot do run every month because they just want to keep in front of those people. You can switch where you send it, but I suggest at least 4 times to the same area. So I wouldn't change the area you're sending it to, but maybe 3 times a year. So the things that you need to think about now, you can go when you're going to find a company. I use a direct mail broker. Nobody really knows about this. I don't know why. I use a guy, he's the dental direct mail guy that is just a broker. And he goes out and brokers deals. He gets deals on everything from postage to printing to everything. So he always has the cheapest rates and the best zones to send things to. So I use him. There's a lot of other companies out there. I'm not just, trying to push you to him, but what I like about brokered mail is they're always going to find the cheapest rate. And to me, direct mail is a tiny bit of a commodity, right? Like it's, you print it and that's kind of what it is. But I know the other companies don't do that because it's very labor intensive. So they got to kind of differentiate themselves with heat zones and tracking metrics and these dashboards and all that. And that's great. And I think the dental direct mail guy has a lot of that too. But it's think about what you really needed to do, and that's drive in patience. So here's what I want to do. I want to go through exactly what you need to do to have a successful direct mail campaign, because you could spend a lot of money and not get a lot of results if you don't think through these tips. Okay. So the first is create a compelling message. Like I was talking about with, the dad jokes, that was, something different that stood out. But you also need to craft those persuasive messages that are compelling, and the ones that you kind of worked through when you did your leadership brand. What is it my ideal patients want to see from me? And then highlight the benefits of choosing your practice. Could be things like technology, convenient hours, boutique atmosphere, things like that. Then, once you've kind of figured that out, go to a broker, go to a company. If you're spending more than 40 cents on direct mail, I feel like that's probably too much. So I try to keep it under 40 cents. And again, that fluctuates. It goes up and down. Um, the guy I was talking about, I think it's just dentaldirectmailguide.com, but you could probably just Google it. I'll put it in the show notes as well. You may want to mail to the areas most likely to generate your ideal patient, but that's as much as you want to narrow down. I understand, you don't want a lot of Medicaid patients, so maybe you avoid those zones. But a broker is going to be able to take care of that for you, or any company that you work with. But just make sure they have up-to-date information. I'm big on that, right? Because people be like, "Oh no, we bought this list," and I'm like, I hate bought lists because I don't know when they're from. I don't know how they were validated. So just make sure you work with somebody that's reputable on that. Got to be eye catching. It's got to visually be appealing. Lots of times, photos of yourself, your family are good. Shots of the team, shots of a really nice office. Those are great. Or if they're just creative, they can have stock photos on them. I'm not opposed to that. Just doesn't need to be the same boring stock photo everybody else has. Lots of people use a stock photo, but also put a small insert photo of themselves, just so people know there's a person behind it. I highly, highly suggest that. But make sure you're using professional design elements, high quality images, clear, concise messaging, all of that. Just, it needs to look professional. Um, Personalize them. You can personalize your direct mail whenever possible. Make sure that I'm big. We see at least a 28% lift when somebody's name's on it. So a lot of companies are just sending it out to resident or whatever it is. I make sure you get their name on it. Make sure the company you use puts their name on it. And making sure, you're speaking to them and they feel like, they're the ones that you specifically sent it to. Here's the big one. You have to include very clear call to actions. The amount of direct mail I get, not just from dentists, but I'm like, okay, now what did you want me to do with this? Do I schedule online? Am I calling you? Am I, so it's not just, you know, that you send it out. You've got to have a clear call to action and a clear next step. So if it's something to where, hey, nervous to go to the dentist, set up a complimentary tour and see the office. Give them something non-threatening too. But if they want to schedule, get them there. Now, here's what I suggest, because I kind of have to battle people on this a little bit when they go through the direct mail process. I am huge on getting a URL code, QR code on it. It doesn't look great. I get that. But what they can do, and people are so used to this now, is just they can scan it, go straight to your website. Do not send it straight to a appointment request page, because you're basically saying, hey, we don't know each other at all. You've done no research on me at all, but I'm expecting you to book an appointment with me. And that's just not how consumers do it these days. If they would have done that, they would have done that straight from an emergency ad on pay-per-click on Google. So you can do tracking numbers. We do that, but not a lot of people are calling from direct mail anymore. I mean, some do for sure. Don't get me wrong. But if you get them to your website, we can even through those QR codes track that it came from direct mail, which is cool. And it'll show up in your Google Analytics. There's a little hack you got to do that. But just make sure those call to actions are compelling, that there's a sense of urgency to them, that kind of encourage an immediate response. Some of the call to actions that I like are the ones that, do a dental related one, like a free electronic toothbrush, free whitening, all of those. Those are, use complimentary versus free. I definitely said that wrong. Don't use the word free. And then a second one can be more special related as far as, 199 new patient special. I know that's not ideal, but I talked in another episode about why that can help you get in fee for service patients. And then the third needs to be local. So maybe it's a enter to win every new patient's entered to win $100 gift card to a local restaurant, right? But choose that local restaurant, or maybe it's a free gym membership or whatever it is. But definitely have something local so they feel like you're supporting something local. Part of what you could do on there too is cause marketing, where it's like, hey, this month 10% of all our um, you know proceeds are going to go to this particular charity. That gets people revved up too. So that can be a good one. Then you just got to track and measure the results. So like I said, QR code's great, tracking numbers are great, looking at it in Google Analytics is great, but understand that there's a branding element to direct mail, that it is there to constantly pound into the heads of the ideal patients that you want, that I'm here, I'm the person you need to come to, so that when they're ready to make that decision to come to the dentist, you're still, you know, in the forefront. And I'll tell you the interesting thing about direct mail. We used to get really intricate with tracking numbers. They've gotten really expensive, so this is kind of cost prohibitive now. But we'd put a different tracking number every month, and it would be amazing. 2 years later, you'd get a call from something, and it was just basically somebody threw it in a drawer, and then finally they had an issue and they pulled it out. They knew they were always going to go there. It's just they didn't have a reason to. So that's another big way. Nobody's keeping anything digital in their junk drawer. So yes, a lot of people throw it out. I throw out a ton of direct mail every day, but I actually, something comes across like window cleaning and I need window cleaning, boom, I'm going to call these people. And then just test it, test the offers, test the messaging, keep an eye on the target market to make sure that's working, and then just kind of continue to optimize it. But I will finish up by saying this, because people ask me this all the time. In direct mail, size kind of matters. So you always want to do postcards because you just need them to look at it, get their attention. Trying to do something that's stuffed in an envelope and then asking them to open it and read it, I don't love that. Magazines, if you're doing something like patient news, I've heard that works great, but that's more for higher end. So that probably is like a 2.0 branding remix. But I will say this: after literally sending out a billion is probably too much, but millions of direct mail pieces for my clients, that traditional like 6x9 card works better than the smaller 4x6s or those large 8x11s. It's by far, just because of not just the cost, it's easy for the consumer to handle. Those big, huge cards, I'm not putting in a drawer, right? I'm not hanging that on my fridge. That I'm throwing away. The 4x6 can get lost in, it's just too small. So that 6x9 to me is perfect. But most people have different sizes. That's the one I would suggest. So anyway, speaking of that, in the next episode, we're going to talk about how you're going to work with your outside vendors. So this could, be your marketing company, but I want you to think about all the different people you're going to need to execute. And we're going to talk about that, talk about budgeting, how you're going to get your services out there, the research you need to know, and just some, cool tools and hacks. So looking forward to talking through that on the next episode. Thanks.